Hey everybody, welcome back to the Personal Transformation Podcast. And today we are talking about stress. Now, as I am recording this and we're about to jump into an interview, I can hear out of the corner of my ear, if that's even a thing, screams and shouts from the playground next door where I know my daughter is running around and causing havoc. And as a parent, there's an element of worry and panic and stress. At the same time, I know I also have to do a good job on this podcast about Andrew O'Brien is going to talk to us about stress, and that's stressing me out. Also, the recent understanding that Andrew is only 7 blocks away from me in New York, and we've scheduled this in a virtual setting seems crazy. And now I'm judging myself for past decisions and stressing myself out even more. Phew, luckily, we have Andrew O'Brien here to talk to us about stress and the impact it can cause. But Andrew, I don't know if you can see this. I'm already sweating. So hopefully you have some advice for us on the episode today that can help us all deal with stress. Because I think my situation in this one moment is probably a little bit easier than most people have it. But welcome to the show and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. And yeah, it's crazy. Like we're literally 7 blocks away from each other and we're virtual. But yeah, we're gonna do this thing and then we're gonna meet up in person afterwards at some point.
Definitely. And I already feel peaceful looking at you, not you so much yourself, but the background that you've got a nice serene sunset that's, I guess, tranquil. It's the word that I would say. It's a tranquil background. So thanks for bringing that in. But life isn't like that, Andrew. Life is not tranquil and peaceful. We don't all get to look at a nice serene lake with the sunset. Life is crazy. Life is throwing us curveballs all the time. Life is, dodging traffic and watching out for cyclists as they ignore all the traffic lights and emails coming in and notifications pinging on my phone and, I've got to go and do that and I forgot to do that. And somebody reminds you. Life is crazy. Life is stressful. Life is designed to be stressful. Is there really a life that exists without stress, or do we just have to deal with the stress as it comes in? What's your take?
Yeah, so this can be possible, but to your point, we cannot live without stress. We are human, and as humans, we have a stress response system, and we want that. It's there to protect us. It's there to serve us. And so from that perspective, no, we cannot live without stress per se, but what we can do is manage our nervous system. Because at the end of the day, we're walking nervous systems. And if we learn to master that, stress, that's the name of the game. So you get to kind of, I'm going to go back to this, right? You get to experience some of this tranquility. And so there's a whole like metaphor that I use when I'm describing this, and it's called riding a roller coaster. Have you ever ridden a roller coaster?
I have ridden a roller coaster. Yeah, I took my daughter on a roller coaster just a few months ago. She loves it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's exhilarating for her.
Yeah. So why I use this metaphor is like when you get on that roller coaster, you're starting out, right? And then generally speaking, you're going up pretty slowly up this first peak, right? Up, and you get to that peak and you hang out there for a bit. That's what I call enjoying like the journey to kind of get to these highs of life. And then when you get to that high of life, you're kind of spending some time up there. What happens after that? That roller coaster is going to go for a dip, a pretty steep dip. And that's what I call like these life challenges that we experience and the obstacles and the overwhelm and that stress, right? But the roller coaster, generally speaking, does not hang out down in that trough. It does not hang out in that valley. It goes pretty quick through it. That is what I call the goal of mastering your stress. So you're really taking the time, enjoying the journey up to these highs of life, hanging out there up there, and then with the science, how we take that power back is navigating and transcending those troughs and valleys like pretty efficiently, so that we're not hanging out down there and getting to that burnout stage.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned roller coaster. So again, like I said, went to the theme park with my daughter. It's the first time she's been on a decent sized roller coaster, with the shoulder straps and everything, right? And I think it was dressed like a bee, like it had a bee theme or something like that. So anyway, so we're going in and we're doing that kind of bit up there. And as a parent, I'm sat there, I'm kind of looking at her and I'm like, I'm stressed that she's going to put her hands up and somebody's going to get hit or she's going to lean out the car. And she's just screaming and like loving life, and I'm there panicking and stressing and freaking out and wondering about all these things. And we kind of do that whole journey. We go up to the top and then we do this round the corner thing, and then it goes dark because it goes into a tunnel, and then you get this scary dragon, and they take a photo exactly at that moment. So there's that face on you, and you get to the end, and of course one of two things happens. She jumps out of the roller coaster, she's like again, and literally runs around. And I get out, I'm like, oh my God, that was the most stressful thing. I'm exhausted, and I'm literally drained of energy from my body. And I think what you're talking about, some people can take stress and deal with it and not be exhausted, but live with life and kind of go on and maybe a bit more tranquil. Some people, and we hear all about burnout and chronic fatigue and all of these kind of things. Some people get hit by stress a little bit more powerfully, and it takes them out of the game. So is this what you're talking about, being able to manage stress and the kind of impact it has on the body?
Yeah, another way that I say that is mastering that stress, because to me that's what it's all about. And your point there really brings us back to that nervous system, humans as nervous systems, and it really highlights the situation in and of itself does not cause the stress. It's how we as the human react to whatever situation. Now I'm thinking about your daughter and you, like up there, like you're panicking, you're just like, what is going to happen? Thinking about all sorts of like horrible scenarios, and she is like so excited. She's like, yeah, let's do this, right? Two different humans, same situation, but you're reacting to it in different ways. And so it's how we react to the situation that impacts our stress levels internally and biologically, not the actual situation itself.
So what do we need to do then? So like I said, we both said this, stress isn't going away. Stress is here to stay. There's always going to be events happening. There's always going to be challenges that, and Mike Tyson says, everyone's got a plan to get punched in the face. There's always that kind of that on a Monday morning. It's just like, what? And things along those lines. So what do we need to do? What do we need to do? What do we need to become aware of? And I know you've studied the science behind stress and stress management. What are some of the things that we really need to be aware of to help get through these situations without getting to exhaustion?
Yeah, and so what I've done over the years is really summarize all of the relevant science into 10 different buckets, 10 different domains. Some of what I'll highlight might be reminders of like just truly getting back to the basics. And some of these buckets or categories might be, oh, never really quite thought about it like that. And I can certainly get into these 10. But I also want to just make a note that this, like, there is also such a thing as good stress. And it's really kind of understanding you, and we'll get into that shortly, but it's understanding you and what good stress means for you, because good stress can actually increase our energy to do something that we actually want to do for our lives, which can be a very good thing. It's when we get to a stage where our stress is kind of like gets beyond, transcends that moment to into that chronic stress stage, into that burnout stage, where we are experiencing that overwhelm, that fatigue, and all the different things, which we can also get into. But I just wanted to make that note that not all stress is bad. Like there is good stress, and this stress response system is there again to protect us, serve us, and it's very biological. So to have compassion for yourself, if you are experiencing this ongoing like ugness of stress, you're not alone. And what I can share now is the strategies and the science that we can take that power back.
I need to jump into those techniques. I mean, I do remember a little bit back to sports psychology, way back when. I think it's called eustress or something like that. Is this idea that we have a curve of a, I don't want to use the word arousal on a podcast, but we've used it now. But it is this kind of arousal curve, right? At low levels of stress, we're just asleep, we're dormant, we don't need to do anything. At high levels of stress, we're overwhelmed, we're panicking. But somewhere in the middle, and it's different for everyone, is we have this point where we're excited, we're switched on, we're ready to go. And my sport, I used to play American football back in the day, was, we'd be in the locker room, we're getting ready for the game, and the tunes are on, and everyone's like, yeah, let's go, and like the banging heads and kind of all of these kind of things. but I'm the quarterback. I need to make decisions. I actually need to slow things down. So I would move my stress or my kind of excitement level down a little bit. I try and relax and chill out a little bit more than some of the guys who are just going to go out and hitting. So I think stress is it's definitely contextual based on kind of some of the challenges you've got or what you need to be able to do or how you need to show up. But like you say, we need stress. It turns us on. And then if you think about flow, this other concept I'm sure you're going to go into as well, is stress versus ability. This idea that if we have the right level of stress, but also the right level of ability, then there's some kind of sweet spot that gets us into this kind of productivity mindset. And so without stress, like you say, with this pure tranquility, nothing gets done. So we kind of got to switch ourselves on a little bit. So before we jump into some of the science, Andrew, you look very chilled out, but have you always been this way? Have you always been kind of a calm and you speak slowly, and I even feel more relaxed just listening to you, but has life always been this way?
That is an easy no to say. I have not always been like this. I've struggled with managing my own stress for many years. And the last bout of my burnout was a few years ago, but ever since, like, this is when I kind of like put all of this 10 together and started to do this stuff for me, like personally. And it's like, I can tell that it's working because of my own physical stress symptoms and emotional stress symptoms that are no longer there. And they haven't been there for a few years. That's how I know that it works. And then obviously with the clients that I work with. But yeah, no, I experienced many years of just not good stuff.
Give us some of the juicy details. I feel there's a story there, but whatever you're comfortable sharing. What does stress look, or what did stress look like for you, kind of that built you up to this point where you're like, I'm just exhausted, I'm done?
Yeah. So going back in the day, so I grew up in a town that on the surface I looked like everyone else, but on the inside I was certainly not like everyone else. And I was raised in a time where being gay was not accepted. I mean, still to this point, it's not fully accepted and embraced, but I think we've come a long way from that perspective. But back then, like I was seeing like news stories of other gay kids getting bullied, getting attacked, getting even murdered. And as a gay man myself, growing up in this town, like that petrified me. Like, and my brain, what did my brain decide to do as a way to protect me? What did my nervous system decide to do as a way to protect me? It said, okay, I need to figure out how to fit in. I cannot be myself, because if I'm myself, I could actually get killed.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really the start of many years of me doing things that were not authentically me, being someone who I really wasn't, putting a lot of pressure on myself to kind of get those straight A's, be that perfectionist, to excel in ways where I would get applauded and recognized for fitting in. And in that high school, there were two ways to fit in. One was to do well academically, and the other was to be an athlete. And I really wasn't much of an athlete back then. So that's what I chose. I chose like the nerd way. And yeah, I got some bullies out of being a nerd, but at least I was getting those straight A report cards and getting accolades from the school system, from my parents, like everybody. And then that transformed into like the rest of my college years, my professional life, just like the super perfection, which is not a thing. It's a made up thing. This perfectionism, we strive for it, but it's just like not a thing. We're human and we're not capable of being perfect, and that is absolutely okay. And so that's where it all stemmed from. And through all of that, started to experience many different physical stress symptoms, like incessant eyelid twitches. I don't know if you've ever experienced an eyelid twitch.
Oh yeah.
Not painful, but also not fun. And if you experience like a year straight of that, you literally go insane. And you're like, what is going on? And how can I cure this? And what is wrong with me? And then you start to attack all of that, like self-doubt and criticism on yourself and like hemorrhoids, that might be TMI for this podcast, but like a bout of hemorrhoids, that's something that I experienced as well. Not fun. Um, I and then emotional stress symptoms. Like I wasn't ever clinically depressed, like diagnosed as clinically depressed, but I was down. I did work with a therapist for a bit of time, and she supported me in the way that she supported me, but like she never kind of gave me a diagnosis of being depressed. But I was down, and one of the reasons why I was down is because I came into the realization, and this was the last bout a few years ago, I was spending most of my day, 10, 12 hours of my day, doing work that was not fueling me. I was doing work that was actually draining my soul, and I didn't quite know it. I didn't put two and two together until I was able to like reflect on it and working with that therapist at the time. And so that's another way. That's another way, like when we are not being aligned with our value system, and if we're not taking actions or making decisions that are alignment with our value system, that could be a big discord for us and create a lot of undue stress our way. So that at a very high level is kind of like what helps me get here.
If that was high level, I'd love to hear the detailed version at some point. But that's and again, thanks for sharing, because I know it's, you know, probably even now, and I could see it as you were recounting the situation, the challenge of deciding whether you live authentically and in alignment with who you really are, or if you do things that you don't want to do just to fit in, and literally fear for your own safety is going to create stress. And like you say, that plays out mentally, it plays out physically, emotionally. And like you say, you don't need to be diagnosed as depressed, but the resistance that you were facing at that point to move forwards must have been immense. So yeah, I can see why looking for answers, and you know, it sounds like you found some as well, which are quite useful, would have been part of the journey. And you know, if you are listening, it's interesting, right? Is that everyone's stress feels like intent, but the scenarios don't all match up, right? But you know, if you're feeling stressed and you're feeling like overwhelmed, all those kind of things, and you look at your journey, you think, well, mine's not as bad as Andrew. Don't compare, right? Don't compare, because this is one of the things, right? It's like, well, you know, we never get out of it because, well, as long as, you know, I didn't have to go through what Andrew through, I should be grateful, I should be appreciative. But you know, when we're in these moments, stress is stress, and our body feels the same, even if it's a different experience. So well done for making it through, and thanks for joining us on the podcast, so you can bring some of the wisdom of, I guess, from that moment to the realization of how to manage all of the symptoms. So where did you start? You said you had a therapist. Where did you start? Was it books? Was it a coach? How did you begin the journey of going, and actually, on that point, was there a trigger? What was it that said enough is enough? Right, and then you kind of turned the page and started.
Yeah, I so before this career, my former career, I spent many years in the HR world, and where it started for me was literally at a event. It was a through my professional membership, I attended this conference, and it was all about health and wellness, and something spoke to me about it, and I went. And it was led by a chiropractor, and this chiropractor highlighted a bunch of this science that I've taken on with me, and it really hit home with me because it's, well, A, it's science, and I'm very much into that, and B, it was very applicable. Like the recommendations were very easy to take away and bring with me as I left that conference. And so that's where it all began. And then from there, it kind of transitioned into kind of like a spiritual awakening in a way. And yeah, there were some books I read. I got connected with, and one of these books was written by Anina Moorjani, who I don't know. I felt very connected with her. And if you don't know the story, just real quick, she actually died. She came back to her body, and she's here to talk about it. And one of her main messages is all about the key is living life fearlessly. That was her key for me. And then fast forward to one of the Facebook Lives that she did back in the day. I don't think she quite does them anymore, but I tuned into one because one was all about like life purpose. And this was like during my last burnout phase. And I was like, I got to tune into this one. And so I did. And she dropped like a few questions in there that that were all intended to kind of help someone get clarity on what their purpose is in life. And one of the questions that she did drop was, what do you always do for free? And I remember journaling the hell out of that one. And that's actually when I was working with a therapist, and I was thankful that I had someone to like, here's my list. And I read the list out to her, and just without even a flinch, she's like, have you ever considered becoming a life coach? Because like she's like, this screams out life coach, and then the rest is history. But yeah, it all started at that health and wellness conference.
What was other than the kind of what would you do for free? And I always give credit to Seth Godin on this. He says a lot of people would say, what would you dare to do if you knew you couldn't fail? And he flips it around and says, what would you dare to do if you knew you would fail, but you would do it anyway? Is that idea that, you know, this is what we're built for. This is what we're uniquely here for. But was there any other questions that kind of got you to open your eyes and specifically start thinking about the stress of not living a kind of fulfilling life?
Not so much questions. It was the different books that I read, and then it was just it. At one point, it all clicked to me. It's like it's the brain. The brain is in control of our nervous system, and if we're not optimizing the health of our brain, we are setting us up to fail the stress game.
Yep.
Like it's just simple as that. And that's when I don't quite recall when that all clicked for me, but like that whole brain health piece was everything for me. And then the rest, like, and that was like, even goes back to that first HR health and wellness conference. Like there was so much of that was like brain health.
Yeah. And
then through the books, different parts of brain health. And then, yeah, so it all kind of like came together. I was like, it's brain health, like we're nervous systems. And like, if we master that, we can master our life. And that's what it's all about.
So you talked about 10 boxes. You talked about 10 areas. I'm guessing brain health is going to be a big one of those kind of components. What are some of those things? What are some of the things that you found most powerful for helping people manage and deal with stress?
Yeah. And all of these 10, by the way, are ways to optimize that brain health. And a disclaimer that I want to just share here is that there's no order of importance here. Like, for me, starting at 1 and going to 10, but it doesn't mean like 10 is like the least important. It's all about optimizing all of them.
Yeah.
All of this 10 in the way that works for you. And that's the last point that I want to make, is that this science applies to us all as a human. But how we incorporate it into our life is going to be different. And that's the beauty of it. It can also be the challenge of it, but that's the beauty of it. Like, we're all different. We're all the same. We have nervous systems, but we're also very different in our preferences and things of that nature. So
if you're listening, pick from the menu whichever one best meets your requirements.
Yes. And so, yeah, some of these, I'll start off with the ones that might be reminders and getting back to basics. And like, I would say maybe the quickest way to signal to our brains, it's time for homeostasis again. It's time to kind of like calm down, is the breath, is the oxygen. 20%, approximately 25%, not 25, approximately 20% of our body's total oxygen supply is actually consumed by that brain. And so when we are shallow breathing, we're actually not giving the brain what it's craving and what it actually needs to do its thing.
Yeah.
And so when I say breathing, I'm talking about that mindful, that deep breathing, bringing those inhales down to the bottoms of those bellies. I guarantee you, myself included, this is something I continue to work on. Like right now, as I'm podcasting with you, I'm not deep breathing.
Yep.
I'm 100% shallow breathing, and I'm going to fully admit it.
I'm writing it down because this is one that I've worked on in the past, and like the inhalation, the oxygenation, but also the exhalation, getting rid of all the blah that's still in our body is a huge one. I'm going to sit a little bit better now and try and be on my best behavior while we're doing this. But,
yeah. But yeah, like the more that you do it, the more mindful you become, the more you're like, oh wait, this is a good time. I'm gonna just take that deep breath. So even if it's just like 5 throughout the day, it's better than not doing it at all.
Yeah.
And so there's a ton of different breathing methods out there, and this is where it becomes like individualized. So I encourage folks to kind of like Google all of the different breathing methods and find one that works for you um, and go to town with it. So
the one like, because I did a little bit of meditation. So if you're listening, just here's the one that I found to be really useful. And it's this kind of half breathing, half meditation or mindfulness. Is this idea that we breathe in and out, right? Is that up, down, up, down? But if you can try and round the corners, like I find that really good. So you kind of breathe in and don't make it such a jerky change. I don't know. It's like a rounding off. It just slows everything down a little bit. I don't know. Like it works for me. But that visualization of a kind of circular breathing or trying to hold the breath without it being kind of a solid hold. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Thought that's some color.
That works for you, Dan. It might not work for everyone. But and yeah, so there's like another breathing method out there called the box breathing method. And it's where you're like holding, you're inhaling for 4, you're holding for 4, you're exhaling for 4, and holding again for 4.
Yep.
There's actually a lot of science behind this one, this particular method, and different organizations that do experience high stress. Navy SEALs have used this method in the past and have reported some really key benefits from it. But that's more like, it's more of a rigid approach than more of a rounded approach. So again, it's really all about what you connect with.
Yep, exactly. Good. I'll try and Google some and put them into the notes. Okay, cool. Breathing, check. I'm sitting well. I'm breathing nicely now.
Yes. All right. Number 2. Again, back to basics. Hydration, water consumption. I see your face there.
I'm moving to the coffee now. I do have the bottle here, but it is a little bit too much full.
Yeah. So again, approximately 80% of our brain is water, which is insane. And so even mild deprivation can lead to feeling that fogginess, feeling that fatigue, and over time that'll build. So that, and we're just talking straight up water. We're not talking about like carbonated beverages. We're not talking about water mixed with anything else. Maybe infused with like natural fruits could be a good thing, but straight up water. How much are you drinking in a day? The CDC doesn't currently have standard guidance for us. I don't think they will ever get there, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. But I did connect with a couple of nutritionists, and they do not know each other. Their recommendations each were to see if you can maintain a pale yellow urine color throughout the day. If you're able to manage that, they both say that you are likely well hydrated. The reason why I believe that the CDC won't ever be able to kind of put out straight guidance is just because like we're all living in different parts of the country, different temperatures, we're sweating, we're all different shapes and sizes, where we might be like more active than others, and it's really all dictated on like how much we do sweat as well. It's a big factor on it. And so I think that urine color is really a nice gauge.
It's a good indicator, right, of hydration.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I've had a drink. I'm still working on my breathing, although I just crossed my eyes. I'm going to breathe again.
Yep.
What else?
Oh, the third category, you might not be able to do right now, but that's fine. It's all about optimizing your nutrition. And the fun fact here, and I'm still blown away by this, approximately 95% of our serotonin, which you might know is one of our feel-good hormones, it's produced in the gut. Mm-hmm. Insane. And the gut, if you don't know, is very intimately connected with our brains through the vagus nerve, constantly sending signals back and forth, constant. And so if we're not giving that gut what it wants, and what it wants are those nutritious foods, which I'll highlight in just a moment, that serotonin does not have a chance to manufacture, and could be a contributing factor into us not feeling as good as we can feel. From the CDC perspective, what should we be optimizing? The vegetables, the fruits, the whole grains, the lean proteins, the healthy fats, those omega-3s. What should we be avoiding / limiting? Those ultra processed food.
Sugar.
Yeah.
I'm the sugar police. Like everyone calls me sugar police. Sugar. Like there's
Yeah,
nothing that the sugar's going to do except make you like and then up
yeah,
and down and up and down, which is the roller coaster that you're talking about. It just emulates that.
yeah. Those added sugars are not great for us. They're basically like steak. It's poison, and that's coming from a sweet tooth. Like I do love my dessert, uh, but it's it's something that we should limit or avoid completely,
Yep.
if at all possible. And then of course, alcohol fits in there as well under the limit/avoid category. Just completely not good for that brain of ours. So
Yeah.
so that's and this nutrition we can talk for like days and days and days. It's a very complex category. Nutritionists don't even agree on like the right diet. But what the nutritionists can agree on is the foundational guidance that the CDC puts out, which is what I just shared. If you want to learn more about it, I would just check out the CDC guidance on all of that.
Yeah, no, I'm a bodybuilder, so I spend a lot of time thinking about my food and weighing out food and stuff like that. So basically, it's and what you talked about here, you know, in terms of breathing, hydration, nutrition, is maintaining that in a environment to be, I guess, a little bit more immune to the ups and downs of the emotional roller coaster. Physiology, stress is a physiological response, right? So the more control we have of our physiology, the better, and the less erratic we are with like the energy, caffeine and alcohol. And you know, I still have a glass of wine occasionally. I occasionally have some chocolate, like, and you know, if my daughter has the ice cream, I'll definitely have a little taste. So it's not terrible, but it's just moderation. I think, you know, like you said, is look at the indicators, not the input. So you know, if you know you're always up and down, then look at yourself. Do you have too much caffeine or sugar or anything on it?
Yeah.
So let's move if we can. So I'm going to say physiologically, internally, let's look after that internal environment. Let's do that. How do we move into some of the kind of more psychological or thought-based areas that, because stress is really happening up here in the head as well as the body, what do we need to be thinking about or thinking differently about to kind of make ourselves a little bit more immune to the stress?
Yeah. Well, I will say it is all connected. So the first three things that I highlighted, it's very, 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 very connected to the mind, to the brain. And so I don't want folks to think of like, oh, this is just a physical thing versus this is just an emotional thing. That's not what it is at all. Like it's all very much connected. But yeah, one of these areas is one of these 10 buckets that is out there is all about connection. That's a big one. And under this connection umbrella, I actually highlight 3 different prongs. The first prong is connecting with other people. Extroverts, introverts, we all need that healthy connection with other people. We're social creatures. And yeah, that is absolutely key. I don't really spend a lot of time on that prong because I like to talk about the 2 other prongs that I think go unnoticed quite a bit. And that second prong is connection to your environment. And that environment is your work environment, your home environment, your city environment, your state environment, your country environment. Like, do you feel connected to it? Do you feel like that you can take that beat to reset, take that beat to recharge, refuel? Do you feel safe in there? Super, super important. And then that third prong is all about connection to self. What does that look like? We mentioned values earlier today, like me making decisions and taking actions that are not in alignment with my values. What are your values? What is important to you in this life? Who are you? Like, do you know your personality type? And now the listeners might be saying, like, this guy sounds like woo-woo, but like there's actually science behind that Myers-Briggs personality type assessment. Like, that's the only assessment that's been validated time and time and time again. There's one, and that work was taken on by Carl Jung. He's no longer with us. That work is now taken on by Dr. Nardi, and he keeps he's kind of brought forward some really fascinating MRIs with different personality types, and it's a real thing, folks. So like, do you know who you are? These personality types, based on the latest science, 40 to 60% of our personalities, we're born with. The rest of our personality, yeah, it's influenced by environment, conditioning, all of the things. But at the end of the day, we are hardwired in a way that we have certain natural preferences and tendencies. And do you know what that is? Because when you know what that is, you can actually use that to your advantage and get out of your stress mode and get back into your best mode of operating.
Yeah, I remember the first time I did the Myers-Briggs test, and I was like, oh, I was like early mid-20s, I remember. And I was like, there's no way you can put me in a box. There's no way. I'm unique. I found myself in the exact box. Like I was there.
Yeah.
TJ maybe. But I was like, that's me. And I think, I've done quite a lot on personality profiling and Myers-Briggs disc. I use a mental toughness questionnaire now as well. And the more you understand yourself, I think there's one thing is you can understand yourself and really align with your values and act truer to what it is. Because I think, and you said this earlier, is if you're not acting in alignment with yourself, then you're going to experience more stress as you resist against things.
Yeah.
So it's the understanding that other people are wired differently. So if I'm a ESTJ or whatever it was, and you're a INTP, and we're both wired differently, I'm getting stressed at you because you don't see things the way that I see them, and I want you to. It's like, come on, man! We're just looking at the same thing from two different perspectives. It's the cartoon is there's a 6 drawn in the ground, and I see it as a 6, and you see it as a 9. We're having an argument about what number it is. It's like, it doesn't matter, right? But it's this idea that we create our own stress by not being aware of our own preferences and other people's preferences.
Yeah. And like if people are still struggling with this whole personality type concept and not getting behind it, I get that. But like what I use to explain this 40 to 60% is like, are you right-handed? Are you left-handed? Like you have a preference. You're born with a preference. And let's just say you're right-handed like I am, and your right hand breaks. Temporarily, you're going to learn how to use that left hand to write and get by. So we are capable as humans to learn new things, build new skills, and do different things outside of these personality types. But at the end of the day, when that right hand heals, more than likely you're going to go back to using that right hand because it's your natural preference and that's a new word. Preference and tendency.
Words on this episode, it's fine.
I make up words all the time. It's fine. So yeah, and then another category I wanted to highlight, because this one I think is a really powerful one that many people don't know. When I do these presentations around town, like nobody ever guesses this one. And this is all about expression. This is all about emotional expression. And what I'm talking about is we, for the most part, are taught the wrong thing to do, which is to get over it, to bottle things up, to not show your emotion. That has such negative consequences for our own bodies and ultimately like it'll get us to that burnout stage for sure. And so the goal that I always talk about, we need to be creating an emotional highway without traffic, because there's always going to be something, that situation, right? It's not the situation that's stressful. It's how we react to that situation. There's always going to be a situation that trips us up. We're always going to feel something. We are emotional. We are human beings. Emotions are a part of us. We're always going to be feeling something. There's never a moment where we're not going to feel something. So it's acknowledging what we're feeling and honoring what we're feeling, even the ones that don't feel good. That's part of the human condition. It's part of the human experience. The trick is to acknowledge it, to honor it, and then in as real time as possible to release it in a healthy way. I say healthy way because so often we turn to the desserts, we turn to the cigarettes, we turn to the alcohol. Those are the unhealthy ways. Feel good in the short term, but long term, really not so great for us. So it's creating that emotional highway without traffic so that it's a constant flow and we're not storing. There's a whole body of science here called the mind-body syndrome. When we bottle, they will actually explode into physical stress symptoms or emotional stress symptoms. And I really wanted to highlight that during this podcast as well as one of these 10.
I like the word you use there, expression. And I don't think it's just verbally. I think, I'd have to search for research, but, I remember, again, years ago, not being as vocal and not saying as much, because for me at that time, it was my family that had all the problems. I had crazy problems, but I wasn't going to tell anybody about them because it didn't seem as bad. Again, comparison. But I bottled them up, and eventually it came out, but it didn't come out like drip. It was like a volcano, just going out completely crazy. And I remember having a conversation with my sister, and she's like, "This is the first time you've actually talked to me. Like, not just pleasantries, not just, you know, superficialness, but actually been open." And that created for the two of us that kind of highway that we could just talk to each other a lot more openly, which was just freeing and just so useful. And you know, I'm glad to say that I've taken advantage of said highway multiple times, and hopefully she's reciprocated as well. But it's important, right? And it's funny, but that conversation has stigma. And I posted about it on LinkedIn the other day, and somebody commented, and it's a guy who's you know, he's a champion athlete, and it's like, yeah, he has dark days as well. It's like, we all have dark days, man. Just because somebody looks like a superhero doesn't mean they like are impervious to these kind of thoughts. So
Yeah.
I think the verbal expression is one, but then there's, and you talked about this physical reaction to stress. I genuinely think that there's a, if you don't express your personality through action and doing the things that you're called to do, I think that's going to bottle up and create things as well. And I can't tell you what the research is, but I'm pretty sure it's out there. Is there's research now that shows by not doing the things and by not living the life that you are compelled to do, your unique life, that will show up in health concerns and health challenges that are symptoms of stress. I'm going to go and do the research afterwards, but two aspects of expression it, like the verbal, but also the physical internal desires that you've got as well. Well, there you go. I'll show
you. And there's so many different ways to express, right? Like, I have like there's writing, there's journaling. Maybe you like to dance, maybe you like to sing, maybe you like to write songs, maybe you like to write poetry. I have clients who literally go out into nature and they don't feel comfortable talking to people, so they talk to nature, whether that's the tree, whether that's the sun, and just to kind of get things off, get things out, creating that space and letting things flow. And that's really the name of the game.
It's hilarious, isn't it? We think that stress, you know, we started off, we were talking about the office, the emails, and all this kind of real world, like I say real world, whatever that is. But actually it's taking care of our own internal environment, and just by thinking about it and living in life, and you know, understanding that actually we can get rid of some of this stuff, and sharing your environment with people or whatever it is you share it with. Let's go to that kind of more cognitive area. Is there cognitive advice that you give people, the way to think about stress, the way we, you know, something comes in and we kind of fight against it or resist it? Is there any ways we should be thinking about stress a little bit differently?
I mean, I think the number one thing is to be aware, learn to become aware of when it is that you are stressed, because oftentimes it could be invisible. And I'll give you an example, like cholesterol, not to get back to nutrition, but it's not just nutrition that impacts cholesterol. Like that cortisol hormone, which is our stress hormone, elevated for periods of time, that can actually increase our LDL cholesterol, which is really not the ideal cholesterol for us to have. And so that may be a way for you to see what's happening internally is getting your biometrics done through your provider, and that could be a sign. That look for that LDL in particular, and see if that's elevated, because that could be a sign that you're stressed. But also, like, tuning in, checking in with yourself. Like, during my last phase of burnout, I was irritable, and I know that at my core that is not who I am. That could be a sign. Like, are you being someone who you're fundamentally not? And you know who you are deep down inside. Because oftentimes our stress mode is going to be complete opposite from our best mode. And our best mode is our core. And so that stress mode will be an indicator. Like if you're acting out in certain ways, if you're pulling in, if you're kind of like cocooning yourself away from people when you ordinarily love connecting with people, that could also be a telltale sign that something's going on from this stress perspective. So I think it's learning to become aware of what stress is for you and how it manifests in you. The stress symptoms, like the physical symptoms, the emotional symptoms, of course. And then it's taking that beat. It's taking that beat, acknowledging that you're human, acknowledging that what is happening is biological, knowing that you have control here, knowing that you are in control here, knowing that you can put this science to work for you as opposed to against you, and start taking those actions. No step is too big. Even if it's just a pinky toe step forward, it's something. Even if you're just thinking about doing something differently, it's something. And that's what I would kind of like recommend as moving forward.
I feel more tranquil. I feel like I definitely need to practice my breathing. I feel like I shouldn't look at the coffee cup, but I should look at the water bottle a little bit more often. It's
Yeah.
I think what you said about the being authentic and understanding and recognizing yourself and living a little bit more in alignment with that and just accepting that as it is and being true to that, I think is important. I know we can't eliminate stress, but is there, as well as those things, is there anything practical that you've kind of worked on to help reduce the amount of stress that comes in? Because obviously a lot of stuff comes in from the outside. Is there any kind of advice you give to people in terms of how do you minimize the amount of stress that's coming into your life?
Yeah, so when you optimize these 10 buckets, that's the way to do it.
Mm.
When you optimize that, you're literally going to experience more of like enjoying the rides up, right? And spending that time up there at that top of that peak.
Yep.
And then getting through the obstacles and challenges of life really efficiently and quickly, and not hanging out down there. That's the goal. That is the life. And when we are managing our stress, when we're mastering our nervous systems in this way, that's when things become more clear. That's when things become more possible. That's when what I call your true North Star becomes visible. And that's when you have that energy and that motivation to start taking steps towards that. And that creates more life fulfillment. And that's the advice that I have. It's optimizing the science in your favor. And that science, based on my training and education experience, are these 10 buckets. It sounds simple, easier said than done. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah,
there's simplicity in knowing that.
Yeah, power is in the simplicity thing. Like again, just the simple concept of breathing right and doing something like that we don't give it credit for, that we don't put enough time in, and we all know it. We all know that we need oxygen to go into our body and get rid of carbon dioxide. We all know that, and yet we just kind of hunch around and lean over our desks and do those things that kind of make it more difficult. So, no, Andrew, I think this is really interesting, and I know you've got a PDF of the 10 buckets you've talked about, so I'll put that in the show notes for people to engage with and have a look at, and kind of like you say, it's a menu. It's take the areas that are most important to you. I know there's definitely some things I'm going to be doing as a result of this. He said, breathing properly. I think it's one of those ones, and you mentioned this is, at the beginning, is burnout is just such a big aspect, and we often experience burnout because we're fighting to do things that we're maybe not necessarily wired for, and there's going to be some ways to simplify life a little bit as well. So thank you for sharing the science, and I'm a bit nerdy as well. I like the science, and I like to try and kind of use the hocus pocus stuff is fun, but let's kind of go into the fact-based evidence. If there was one thing that you were going to say to people, like what's the one thing they should think differently or do differently as a result of listening to this, what would that be?
There's one thing.
Just one.
I would say it's have compassion for yourself for being a human.
Why is that so important?
We beat ourselves up quite often. And if you are struggling, if you're on the struggle bus right now, you're not alone. And you're there because biology, right? Because we're not managing it right now. So having compassion for the fact that you are experiencing what you're experiencing because of maybe what you didn't know before you tuned into this podcast. And maybe now that you know some of this new stuff, you can begin to manage this in a different way to take that power back. But that self-compassion piece, I think, is very underrated. And I think it's really important for us not just in this journey, but like in everything that we do. And to just never lose sight of how much of a gift you are to this planet.
Yeah. No, I like it. I think, like I said, take a breath, recognize you're not alone in your challenge. As you mentioned, reconnect with your space, your environment, some friends, have a conversation, open that dialogue. Things are a little bit easier once they're shared, I think, and out in the open. Don't take things so seriously, and then, like you said, is do the next right thing, even if that's just a tiny little thing in the right direction.
Yeah.
Another deep breath in. Andrew, thank you so much. This has been a great reminder, and I think, like you said, there's some hygiene things, there's some basic things that actually it starts there, having that environment to cope with stress as it comes in, that we can better manage ourselves in that environment. I think is such a key thing, and some great insights as well. So we'll share the 10 buckets, and we'll make sure people get access to that. If there's a way that they can connect with you, what's the best way for them to find out more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, folks can get in touch with me. I offer a free stress relief strategy call, and so you can get access to that on my website as well. Book your time slot, and it would be an honor to connect in that way.
Thank you for turning your experiences into your superpower and sharing those piece of advice with us today, Andrew. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, I look forward to a coffee a little bit closer next time.
Exactly. Thank you so much for having me, Dan. Really appreciate it and the opportunity.